Wowie, wowie, wowie! Here we are at the Jess plus Scott plus you show tonight. And for those of you who saw me someplace else online today, I am bringing through my prop, this beautiful, look at this, I even have a mane. Yeah, I have a rainbow mane to go with my unicorn ears and my unicorn horn. Why do you ask? Well, it's you, the total package, and in all of our quirkiness and in all of our lovability and in all of our irksomeness, we have some amazing things that when we have conversations with others, whether it's one-to-one, one to a small group, or one to a large group, that we can package specifically for us so that not only are we memorable in our conversation, the conversation that we're having is remembered more, but it opens the door to let people see who we are and maybe break the ice to give the people we're connecting to in a one-to-many situation enough of a sense of who we are that it breaks the barrier and they will come up and have a conversation with us after we're done talking. And who needs to hide behind anything, right? Well, let's see, I don't know if you can see what's on that piece of paper, so we'll turn it to the blank side. We don't need to hide behind stuff like this. Oh, no. When we're talking about the me first and the supreme unselfishness, what we have to say matters and how we say it matters. So let's go to the open, and Scott and I will be right back.
Okay, Jess, take it away.
Okay. So when we're talking about things, right, I actually mentioned stocks in the description of this show. And why does that even matter, right? Those are the things that people think about last. And in reality, those are the things like that, right? That when people say dot the T's and cross the I's, that really means something, and or the devil is in the details, which I'd say the sparkle is in the details. What about you, Scott?
I'm just settling in here. I think that the sparkle is in the details. I hate the expression "devil is in the details" because that just takes things off until the entire wrong direction, in my opinion. So it's an expression I really try and stay away from.
Yeah, well, and when we think about the sparkle in the details, and we think about our unique traits and the things that we love about ourselves or that others love about us, we get into some things where maybe we're a little self-conscious. And tonight, you and I, we are so excited to have three amazing people that are specialists in their fields that can really help us understand how some of the sparkle in the details is very additive to our presentation, and some things we might try out and try on to connect better in whatever medium or media that we happen to be in. So I'd love to take this time to introduce and let our guests introduce themselves for a minute. We'll go with ladies first. Michelle Mazur, how are you tonight?
I am doing great, Jess. Thanks for having me.
And tell us a little bit about what you do in terms of communication and packaging your clients.
Sure. So my company is called Communication Rebel, and I am the CEO and head speech designer, and my focus is on creating and developing content for entrepreneurs that really create epic experiences for the audience. So I look at myself as a passionate advocate of your audience, and that everything that we do in a presentation, we do it for the audience because it makes it a better experience for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And Geoffrey, hello and welcome to the Jess and Scott and You Show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm having a lot of fun already with lots of ideas. So what do? Well, I help people be authentic in front of the camera or in front of their audience. I call it be real, show up. I've been doing that for a while. I coach teams I think the biggest fun for me is to see the impact and the connection that takes place with people when a speaker is really flying. It's almost like magic. It's like they're spellbind the audience. And that's a combination of things, the E factor. I've been doing it so long, I don't even notice that I'm doing it anymore, and I love it. It's just such great fun.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for being here with us tonight, Geoffrey. And Gary Rogers, how are you tonight?
I'll be any better, Jess. I've been in the video production motion picture industry for the last over 30 years now. Before that, over 40 years ago, I was with 3M Company as a Western Region Training Manager. At that time, I was teaching public speaking presentation skills, and I've been doing it ever since. Even though I've been involved in these other industries, that I've been doing continuing for almost 45 years now, so I guess I've got a big mouth.
I love it. And I would say I could speak for every single person on this panel and say thank you for saying it out loud, because that is what we are here for tonight. Is it not? Is it not? All right. Well, thank you so much for the introductions. And so, Scott, where do you want to start this conversation tonight?
Well, I'm going to start it just by confessing that the best advice that my dad ever gave me that I did not take was to join Toastmasters. And the reason for that is that presentations are so important in a person's life. And if someone can get the presentations attended to early on, then that is one of those skills, a handful of skills that will serve you for the rest of your life. And here on the Plus, they say, well, the secret to being successful is to be yourself, just relax. And that's great. But that's just the first step, because after that, is there going to be something there, and are you going to be able to present it well enough? The first impressions are so important, but then there's second and third and fourth. And I think that the people in Strip can elaborate on this far better than I, that there's just got to be a correlation between how successful a person is in life and how well that they're able to present themselves. And I'm almost wondering if there is also the discipline of presentation hones one's skill at thinking, so one just becomes a sharper observer of life and better able to cope, because the better that they present themselves, the more they know how life is put together, the more they know how life is put together, the better their skills. And so I'm really looking forward to learning a lot and maybe catching up on 50 years worth of lost time since I didn't take my dad's advice in the first place. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Jess, and let's get the show underway.
All right, well then let's see. So out in the stratosphere, there were two things that I picked up in what you said. And I think we should start with the sharper observer. So I would love to hear from everybody in a conversational style. Does the ability to put our thoughts together and think about what we want to say in our message actually help us listen better, or interact more, or observe in a way that helps us make stronger connections?
I would say...
Go ahead.
I would say it's a combination. If you're focusing on your audience and you're focusing on your message, you start to really observe what actually makes an impact, what people really pay attention to. And so that makes you a sharper observer of what works. So I always teach my students 3 questions to ask themselves after they've done a presentation. I ask them to note what works. It's easy to pick up on what you think don't work, but first question, what worked? And really write it down, really pay attention to it. Second question is one that you usually can answer really quite easily, what did not work? And the third question, which stimulates lifelong learning is, what could I do differently that it's a 10, you know, the perfect presentation? What could I do differently? And if you do that after every presentation, you'll eventually start learning and observing what's good about what you do and how you do when you do it, when you deliver or you do a presentation. And most people don't realize that almost every time that they're having a conversation, when you pick up the phone to answer your business call or you're going to the bank, you're actually making a presentation. So it's kind of a all-encompassing set of skills, but that's where I would start.
You know, most people don't like salespeople because they talk too much. They never listen. At least people think minds. Whenever I've been in front of an audience and ask, how many of you feel good when I mention the word salesman, you very seldom see very few hands go up. But a good salesman is a person that listens. Very few people listen anymore. I remember years ago when I worked with 3M Company, I walked in the foyer and the receptionist was there, said, "Good morning, Gary, how are you?" And I said, "I got leukemia," and I just kept walking. She said, "Oh, that's great." And I turned around and I said, did you hear what I just said? And she said, "Oh, no, I guess I didn't. You asked me how I was, and I said I had leukemia, and you said that's great." She said, "I did?" She had no idea. She didn't listen to what I was saying. "How are you this morning, Gary?" "I got leukemia." "Great, good for you." People don't listen anymore, and that's sad. A good salesperson can learn more listening to his prospect than just running off diarrhea at the mouth. And we don't do much of that anymore.
And I would add, going back to the sharper observer point, is that as a speaker, you can actually, in the moment, observe your audience. And I talk about this a bit in my book, Speak Up for Your Business. I talk about how to fix your relationship with your audience as you're in the moment. So if you're up there on stage and you have practiced and you know your material and everyone's looking at you like you have 3 heads, then that is a good time to step in and try to fix that relationship. You can include the audience, find out if they have questions, what isn't making sense. So there's always ways in the moment to be a better listener for your audience by observing what they're doing and reacting to that instead of just going on about your merry way and just giving the presentation and then afterwards thinking, "Oh, I don't think that went so well."
Mm-hmm. I use a system to help thinking. In fact, it's based on critical path thinking. It's a funny little model. I'll show you the symbols of it. It's called the archer, the bow and arrow, and the target. So I chose this as a teaching analogy when I was teaching at the University of British Columbia, because getting business people to think outside of the box when they're doing it. The archer is you, the presenter, the speaker. The bow is the tools that you use. For example, the tool that we're using today is a Hangout. The arrow is the message, and the target is obviously the audience. So if you can imagine in medieval times, there's somebody standing on a green lawn pulling back a bow and arrow trying to hit a target. If you think about your organizing yourself in that manner, about the audience first, what you can know about them, what they like, what they don't like, then you can craft the message and find the right tool to actually hit that target. Of course, you've got to develop your skills and hone the skills of actually public speaking.
For those of you just joining us, this is the Jess plus Scott plus You show, and tonight we are talking about you, the total package, and how do we connect more deeply in the messages that we're sharing in whatever medium we might be using. With us are Gary Rogers, Geoffrey Lane, and Michelle Mazur. Jumping right in, I want to dig in a little bit more to the correlation between success and our ability to present ourselves.
Well, I always say that, and this is part of my own story, is that I got involved with public speaking because I was terrified of it, but my mom raised me on a steady diet of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King and all the great orators. And I knew that they could make change in the world because of their ability to communicate their ideas and communicate their message. Because every great social movement, I don't care if you're talking about civil rights or the iPhone, had a leader who was able to articulate their ideas and their vision in a way that people really got, and not only got it, but really felt in the core of their being. So I honestly believe that there's a huge correlation between success and being able to give your ideas a voice. If you can't explain it to others, then your movement or your business is not going to do well. And what's sad about that is it won't make the impact.
And there are statistics that bear out what Michelle just said. AT&T and Stanford University did a study a few years ago that stated the greatest single factor for a person's success was their ability to speak well in front of other people. Yet, the book of lists the fear of speaking in front of other people, absolutely the #1 fear that most human beings have. So the one thing that guarantees our success, so to speak, is the one thing that most people fear the most. I mean, Warren Buffett appears on YouTube right now. You can go to YouTube and see Warren Buffett talking about when he was entering college, just the thought of speaking in front of other people would literally cause Warren Buffett to throw up. He was that frightened. And what did he do? He enrolled in a public speaking skills course, and he said it literally changed his life. And you wonder, where would Warren Buffett be today if he hadn't have learned how to present himself well in front of other people?
Success is a strange term. There's all sorts of kinds of success, and often we think of success only in the terms of great leaders or great business people or amassing a fortune or leading a Fortune 500 company. But the skills of speaking and being real in front of others relates also to the ordinary parts of our life. Getting a mortgage when times are difficult, raising funds for our own small business to grow it, actually asking for a date. Believe it or not, I'm shy. So that, I experienced more of that. I can still remember walking across this, the floor at high school, asking somebody to dance, and when they said no, having to do that dreadful walk back. I don't think that there's anything as such as a natural-born speaker. I think we have abilities, and they need to be coached, and they need to be developed, and they need to be brought out. It is, I've been coaching and training people for a while now, and it's sort of odd. The ones that I see a stratospheric takeoff often don't stay there. It's the shy, hardworking, and thoughtful people who eventually do really well because they want to learn it. I learned it not out of survival, but out of reward. There was no schools where I was, and there was no public speaking courses. But a good friend who knew how to do it just coached me through it. It was lots of fun. My first speaking event was absolutely dreadful.
I want to come back to that in just a minute. What were you going to say, Scott?
Oh, I was just going to ask Geoffrey if there's a correlation between one's own self-image and the ability to learn presentation skills.
I think there is. In fact, the book that I was used to be taught was called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is by Maxwell Maltz, right? And that was all about internal self-image and the way you thought about yourself. I did not think of myself as a competent speaker or comfortable at all, but my good friend Harold just said, read this book and we'll take you through it. And he worked with General Electric, and he was in sales, and sure enough, he took me through it, and there I was start of a new career for me.
That's
Awesome.
amazing. I remember Psycho-Cybernetics from the 1960s, and my dad has come up twice in this conversation. It's a book that he read several times over and gave to me, and that is one book that I'd read. Took his advice on that. That's amazing.
Dan Kennedy has done a rewrite on it, and I would recommend it for everyone. It's a brilliant book.
We'll make sure it's in the comment stream after the show.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, we have a couple of quotes that I'd like to share. The first is from George Green. The mindful listener and observer gives anyone the edge and advantage to communicate clearly and precisely, meeting your audience and or client exactly where they are. Resonance, relevance, and perceptions of value are the desired result. I have another one, and this one is from Tim Longwell. One thing a good speaker can do, and does, while paying attention to their audience, is to adjust and adapt to their presentation and still deliver the message effectively. This is very cool. This is very, very cool. Now we have a question. And so I'm going to come back to my question about storytelling and poor experiences in just a minute. Our question is from Cheryl Locke. What about when you make videos or do something like a Hangout? You can't see the audience reaction until after it's over, and then you still have to hope they post their reactions or their thoughts. Is doing video a hit, a miss, or hope?
I don't think it's either. I think it's really about how you start it. Hangouts can be done privately and then reviewed. So you can try out different styles and different structures. When I do my Hangouts, I actually have, I'm just reaching for it, a kind of a pre-designed script and a layout of what my program is like. And I keep that in front of my screen, and I use a camera, and so I'm able to stay on track. Also, remember, anybody that's watching you, they don't know what's going on inside you, and most people, as was said, they fear public speaking, number one fear. So a great majority of people actually admire you for the fact that you're doing it. And one of the things about doing a Hangout is that it's not like doing a keynote. If I was doing a keynote, my gestures wouldn't fit inside the screen. It's a small box. My energy would be much bigger, louder. I'd be dramatic. I'd be doing. That doesn't work on a Hangout. It is about being authentic. It's about being natural. So often those funny little screw-ups are actually enjoyed, quaint, lovely. I mean, you can be goofy. It's fun.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Okay, now I want to go back because you said something, Geoffrey, that I have a question for all of you guys. And I have a story, and I'm sure that Scott has a story too. I want to talk about an experience in telling a story that didn't go well and how you overcame that, or how it elevated you to make you better. Or how did storytelling and being that observer and that keen listener actually helped you make the connection that you wanted? Or anything else that relates to the story, the power of presentation in a one-on-one, in a one-to-small group, or a one-to-many, or even in the case of a Hangout where it's one to who knows and there is no immediate reaction. So how do we go through? And while you guys are thinking about that, I'll start. Last year, we bought the house that we're in now. So my office right here, this is less than a year old for me, and I love every second of every day in it. And when in Seattle during that time, we decided to look for a house and found this house just at the start of when our market got really hot. And it was a seller's market, and there were multiple offers on everything. And we were at the very beginning. We were in a multiple offer situation for our home. And so one of the things that we decided to do was we decided to write a letter. And we asked that our real estate agent present in person our offer. So they took our letter, they took our story, they took our experience of what we wanted, and they presented in person to the seller. And that actually helped us position ourselves in this home and made an emotional connection with the seller because it resonated with where she had come from, with the things that she had experienced and the memories she had in the house, and she was excited that our family would be able to do the same thing. So that was actually nerve-wracking on many levels because it could have gone any direction. And for us, it worked out all right, and it benefited us in the end. But it took a lot of thought and a lot of care to put something together because we didn't know the seller. We didn't know who we were really talking to. We just needed to speak from our heart in a true, clear fashion to support what we were trying to do, and we made the connection, and we were able to move forward.
Terrific, Jess. Anyone in the panel have a story to share about storytelling?
I don't have a story, but I will tell you that one of the traits of a great speaker is the ability to tell a story. If it's a good story, it's going to get your audience involved, and that's certainly a key to effective public speaking. Get your audience involved, and storytelling is one of the great secrets to a great public speaker. One of the greatest speakers of all time was Jesus Christ. He told stories throughout the Bible constantly called parables because people could relate to stories. It drew them in, and if indeed in your public speaking you can tell a great story, your audience is automatically going to be drawn in.
Is that innate, people born with it, or can you learn it? Or are there some people who just try and could never learn to be a good storyteller?
Well, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I was going to, piggyback off of your comment, Gary, as well, is that I believe that human beings are wired for story. There's a lot of brain science behind why storytelling is so effective, why it engages our brain, the mirror neurons that, when you see someone feel embarrassed on the screen, you feel embarrassed too. But I do think telling a good story is a skill that you have to learn, because I think a lot of the time what people tend to do is tell a story like a laundry list. And you don't need to go in chronological order and show all of the characters, but instead really focusing on the struggle and the key characters and making that and taking it into a story arc. And that is something that's learned. I don't see very many natural born storytellers, but it is in our genes to want to tell stories.
I was in a group with Jessica a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about why people are so frightened to get up and speak in front of other people, and she commented that, well, one of the things is the fear of the unknown, some of the terrible things that can happen when you're up in front of a group. And I said, well, like what? And she said, well, I was in front of a group and I burped. And I said, you what? I didn't really hear it. She said, I burped. She let out a belch, a burp. It was so funny. I mean, the whole group just started out laughing like you did and Michelle did, and you're all smiling right now. And what happens when she told that story, it was funny, and we all laughed, which drew us all in. Yeah. I mean, if we're laughing, we are involved. And telling that story had meaning to everybody in that group. And whenever we get up in front of a group, if we can tell a story that has some meaning to whatever the discussion is, whatever the speech is, by all means incorporate it in your speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. And here is a quote from Debbie Davis. I often hear people say they're not good public speakers, yet when I see them on HOAs, I'd never have guessed it. What do you guys think?
I think one of the great misses that people carry around is that they're not public speakers. They don't realize that they're doing it all the time. It's that if you see 3 or 4 people at having coffee together, usually one person is speaking, they're telling, and so that's a group. 3 or 4 people is a group. What's the difference? Well, yeah, it might look different when it's 3,000 or 4,000 people. The fact that you can't see them, difference. But people are good storytellers, and I don't know if Hangouts online are making the difference. I think it's just opening up the avenue for what I call authenticity, the natural speakers, people that get into it. The old style speakers of super polished, super stylized, that I think is if you want going out of style. I have something that I call the bullshit meter, and it's kind of, here it is, it's a little meter. And when I'm training people, I will actually hold it up and say, hey. And what it is when people have gone from being themselves telling a story or explaining, and they suddenly are acting. They're being something other than they really are. And I think the audience has a very high BS meter. They can hear it in your voice, they get it, and in their heads it goes, eh, 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 eh. If you get too much, of course, you lose the audience. And I've sat. Well, when did I do my first speaking gig? 1973. And I often tell the story when I'm training people, is that, hey, the first time that I threw up, I just had a terrible time. I started, thank God I didn't have to take my jacket off. You would have seen the flop sweat in my shirt and under my arms. But fortunately for me, Michael, the man who actually sponsored me, Michael Sweeney, came up onto the stage and started asking me questions and made it a conversation. And because he made it a conversation, that it worked. And it worked, and that became my style. I'm not a rah-rah speaker. I tend to be a bit in your face and a bit kind of tell it like it is. And it's kind of fun, but it's not my intention ever to hurt anyone. But I'm not interested in somebody that looks like they've just stepped out of a movie set, highly groomed, highly polished in that way, in the modern context. Now, on a big stage, it's different. When you're this big in the audience's eyes and you're up on the screen, you do have to look different than we do here in a Hangout. It is, I get my best suit out and I put on my best shirt and I really give it everything I've got. But in a Hangout and in a business meeting, typically business meetings are 20 people or less. You don't need to go over the top. You need to be real. And of course,
I love it. And I think that this is a good time. There it is. Hold it up again. Hold
One
it up
more
again
time.
for everybody to see. The bullshit meter. Woo woo!
That's great.
And this is really cool because we inadvertently have a great tie-in to tonight's shout about. So I am going to let the shout about do all of the talking. For those of you just joining us, this is the Jess plus Scott plus You show, where we have Gary Rogers, we have Geoffrey Lane, and we have Michelle Laser. Oh, excuse me, Laser rhymes with Mazur. Michelle Mazur. I did it. And we will take a look at the shout out, and we'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, 4, get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great. 9, gonna shine, life is good. I'm doing fine, 10, gonna do it right and do it again, yeah. I look into the sky with all the beautiful color, but there's more than just for me.
Let's shout about curation. You know what I mean. You see all those people out there that go through these motions. They go through these motions of finding this content in an automated fashion and putting it into their streams in an automated fashion using all of these very important great tools to save time. The thing is, it's adding to the noise. The thing is, people are missing your message because they see. It's easy to see through. I see it. Every time I look at your stream, I know. Did you actually read that stuff, or are you using an automated tool all the time? Thinking about a revolving door and having a conversation. So if we're just putting all this content out there, where is the opportunity to really connect? We really want to connect with our audience. It is so important to do so. So when we think about curating content, we actually have to think about how do we curate content to save time, build systems, and be really efficient, in addition to providing value to our target audience. So how do we even do that? Because it's so noisy over there, and because we want to be seen over time in every platform that we choose to be on, we have some choices. They might be easy choices. They could also be hard choices. I mean, if we choose not to be on a specific social media platform, what does that mean? Does that mean we're missing out on business? Maybe. Yet the flip side is we could be making stronger connections on the platform we're choosing to be on. So curating content, it is a very efficient thing to do. What can you do to make sure that your audience knows that you're reading the content and it truly is complementary to your message and is of value to the people who are following you and connecting to you? I want to know. Respond to this video and tell us.
Like I won $1 million, like I get to pay dirt. Gonna smile from ear to ear, the kind that makes your face hurt. And we'll laugh, jump, sing loud, not afraid to shout about being happy, living it out. Take a look and see a beautiful morning.
Okay, I dare you not to sing that song. Listen to that a couple times, and I dare you not to sing that song. It's an amazing, fun thing. All right, so thank you for joining us tonight, everybody. This is so great. For those of you tuning in at the last part of our program, we have Michelle Mazur, we have Geoffrey Lane, and we have Gary Rogers. And now is the time where we're getting close to the end of our program, and we want to spend some time and hear what thoughts have come up for each of these amazing guests from their respective fields and how we might be able to help each other and share some knowledge right here, right now that we can take away and start using. Whichever one of you guys wants to go first, please.
Well, I just think with Hangouts being so prevalent now, we're all on a Hangout, and it's becoming more and more popular. People really do have to learn the skills that we've been talking about here. We've seen some awful presentations on Hangouts, and as Geoffrey said, if you could just be yourself, be natural. Now, I'm more of a loudmouth, and Geoffrey mentioned he's a little quieter. If you could just be yourself, I think it'll come across on the screen. If you can look at that camera and just pretend that camera is a friend of yours and talk to the camera as though it were a friend, hopefully you come across to the viewer on the other end. I see so many people looking down, not talking to the individual with no eye contact. You don't feel connected. But if I'm looking directly at you, hopefully, Michelle, you can feel that I'm talking to you on the other end. But right now, I don't think you really feel connected to me. So many things that we need to learn with this new medium. And the ability to have a broadcast unit in our own homes or our own offices is just absolutely phenomenal.
One action I would love to see people take, especially this relates to storytelling, and Gary and I were talking so passionately about the importance of story, is I think a lot of times people overlook the power of their story, and they just think, well, I'm just an accountant, I'm just a bookkeeper, I'm a life coach, I'm whatever, and I don't really have a story. But you do. You don't have to have some kind of epic story where you're living in your car and now you're a multimillionaire. But really, the stories that are most relatable for audiences are what I call small moment stories. So start looking for those small moment stories, and then you can start talking about them in your business, in your elevator pitch, in your presentations, and everyday conversations, because that really is what makes a connection with people. So look for your small moment stories.
I'd like to sort of wrap up with saying that if it doesn't show that you actually care, it doesn't matter whether it is a large audience or a small audience, or whether you're speaking to 4,000 or 5,000, or you might only be 4 or 5 people watching you live, but there might be 60, 70 thousands watching you later. If they don't get that you're real, that you care, that you don't let your passion show, all the words, stories, props don't matter unless I can connect with you emotionally, authentically, and be real. And of course, by now you know that I have the no bullshit rule. And I say don't bullshit when you're there on a Hangout, because hey, this is a connected world. We can find out about you everywhere. I can type in your name. I can type in your profession. I can find out everything. So if you tell a big one on stage, you're telling a whopper, I can find out. So, hey, no bullshit.
Yes, I love it. This time has gone by way too quickly, and I know we have just scratched the surface. My favorite analogy for experiences like this is the snowflake that just landed on the tip of the iceberg that you can't see down below the ocean. And we want you to keep this conversation going. We want you to share your thoughts and comments in the event on YouTube. Share it out to your streams. Gather those stories. Find that skill that you already have a natural knack for, that you can then polish and hone and use that as a little bit of a hook to start learning other skills when you're presenting and sharing your message, whether it's in conversation, whether it's in Hangout, whether it's on a stage, whether it's in a recording of some kind, or whether it's on a stage with a big, big audience. Now, one of my inspirations for this book, and I know, Scott, I shared this with you, was Talk Like TED, the 9 public speaking secrets of the world's top minds. And this is actually something that I read and made me think of each of these people that joined us, Gary and Geoffrey and Michelle, because they're in our realm. They're people that we know we can learn from them, and we all like TED, so it's kind of a fun resource to have as well, and it's also a good place to go and watch and study. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I've just been so inspired by the last 45 minutes. I'm just really looking forward to looking at our show in replay, because I always know when we're in the film strip, we're looking at it with one set of eyes, and then to be able to look at it differently. I'm also hoping that those who are viewing will check out individually Geoffrey and Michelle and Gary and check them out on the Plus to see what they have to offer, because each of them approach communications and presentations in a slightly different way and in an inspiring way. So I guess those were the closing comments that I wanted to make sure I could get in before saying goodnight.
That's wonderful, Scott. And I have to tell you, this, it's always fun being here with you, and I'm really excited, Scott, that we got to share another show together. And, we're going to be in the same place at the same time next week, so make sure and tune in. The Jess and Scott and you. Actually, it's really the Jess plus Scott plus you. You are the Y in JSY. And we will see you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.